Hey, it is your buddy Peace and Harmony with you here today. And we're zooming in and focusing in on really establishing a whole new mindset or self-concept when it comes to healing through very painful, derogatory, negative, critical relationships with manipulative others. Others who will, perhaps by virtue of their personality disorder, narcissistic, borderline, or psychopathic, who use a pathological sense of self-importance to exert a experience of force or pressure onto others to get them to comply with behaviors, thoughts, emotions, which are not always in the best interest of that individual. So perhaps you have been on the receiving end of a narcissist, borderline, or a psychopathic individual and have felt the exertion or force or pressure or sort of the energy field that can tend to emanate from these people, particularly that of force, meaning they are getting in a very one-directional aggressive energy to get another individual to feel negatively, feel self-doubt, feel self-distrust and distrust of the world at large, not able to have a validation of a positive, peaceful, joyful reality, because that would contradict the negative image of the person with which they're trying to force. So in other words, if a psychopath, a narcissist, or a borderline, because of their inflated sense of self-importance or their need to control others, control the outcome, especially as it relates to how others feel, think, behave, or become, because they have an insatiable need to do this. This is just how they are. It's by virtue of their personality disorder. And so they see what they can get away with. They use this manipulation tactic 24/7. So it's not something that ever relents. It's not something that ever really relieves the tension of. It's kind of always part of their personality, their identity, who they are. It's the fabric of who they are. So you can't really kind of extrapolate it from them. If it's a mother, a fiance, a spouse, a child, someone who you are in close relations with, you cannot change this about them. It has nothing to do with you. This force, this pressure, this criticism, this pathological lying, or, inflated sense of self-importance, the entitlement, and then the lack, coupled with the lack of empathy of these people, it gives them a sort of personality construct or blueprint or template with which to feel that they have the right or the place or the position self-ingratiated or self-given, in other words, that they feel entitled to exert this sort of emotional manipulation of others. This is just how their constructs are. This is the activity of their neural network, of their neurochemistry. And with a lack of empathy, because they have really kind of a slowed or complete deficit, or like in the state of the psychopath, they have no empathy, no conscious. They really don't even have an emotional resonance or sort of feeling of compassion for others whatsoever. They're just devoid of it totally. It's just a mask or a persona when they do put it on in order to manipulate or kind of blend in with the crowd, so to speak. And so it is this experience, which has nothing to do with you. It's just, this is how these people are. So oftentimes there's a feeling of being invalidated or having to comply with this pressure 100%. In other words, to push down your own feelings, your own personality, your own life purpose, your own talents, your own genius, in order to accommodate for them. So it's like you cannot simultaneously comply with their requests and then also kind of oftentimes be at one with your life purpose. The two are not going to be mixed, because for your joy, your bliss, your talent to bloom or blossom or be, it would contradict the control that the narcissist, the psychopath, or the borderline is trying to have over you. So do you see how it would be a tug of war? It's kind of like an all or nothing situation oftentimes. And so to understand that this is just how they are, and then to come out the other end is to oftentimes realize that it has nothing to do with you. There's nothing you could have done differently to avoid the situation, but it is just how it is. And to really understand that is to understand that it's going to be done to other people, even though you might feel singled out. You might have been scapegoated. You might have been really honed in on as a source of a receptacle for this negative treatment. In other words, you were ripe for their picking. You were in the perfect place. You know, it was the perfect storm. You were at the perfect place at the perfect time. And, you know, it was just, this was by design. I mean, there are no accidents. So this had to occur. But so sometimes now it's the alchemizing of that experience and coming through the other end, which is part of your life journey or your number one priority right now. So to kind of overcome that negative construct of these individuals is to understand it from afar and to be your own person and see that you are separate and distinct from this individual. In other words, you have a different cloth. You have a different set of neurochemistry. You have a different sort of heart construct. You have a different heart or play of body, mind, and spirit, which is different from them, and yet which had not perhaps been validated, respected, or been able to be received, because in order to have a real bond, you have to be able to accept someone for who they are and not feel a pressure that you need to change them or control them. Really, when you get to the maturity in relationships, either with raising children or working with people or getting along with people, you have to realize that it's not your duty to change them. It's not your duty to try to control the outcome of their life. You know, if you're a teacher, then you should be able to bring out from people. You know, you might need to present new information, but it's important that the other people begin to receive it, and then they are able to pull it out and then put it into their own application, their own terms, and apply it as need be so they can function properly. Otherwise, it is to condescend, it is to criticize, and oftentimes that creates that negative experience of self, or even negative experience of life in general, because then, you know, this tends to be memorized or generalized to many other situations. So as you can see, you know, at the core of this is that experience. And we had a very lovely viewer who made a very apropos comment, is that, you know, she is not receiving a lot of this discussion through her therapy, through her medical profession or experience with the medical community, that all they want to do is write you a prescription and push you out the door. Write you a prescription, push you out the door. Here's another prescription, and you don't oftentimes get a chance to meet with professionals to just, you know, really dissect this, fillet this, and then discuss it. So it's very important to realize that this is oftentimes what is at play, and to understand that it's, you know, you have had this encounter, but you now, number one, have a responsibility and accountability to yourself to release the pressure valve, to really sort of get out of the vicinity of or claim your inner boundaries for not being able to, you know, not needing to be completely repressurized and reforced, you know, constantly feel the force. It's just to say, you know, the force is from there. I am exerting my own influence upon my own experiences, my own mindset, my own perspective, and I am at calm, because really the source of all success has to come from that calm. It has, and that's where the inspiration comes, and that's when the positive filters, the solutions, the eye that catches the the little email that makes sense to you. It's when you're able to hear your inner voice. It's when you're able to be prompted by inspiration. Like Albert Einstein says, it's 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration. So inspiration is that 1%. It's where that's trying to get your attention. and it's just going to come with a flicker. But once you have it, you know it kind of is building up within you, and it's leading to, to make presence in your life and manifest the positive in your life. But really, you can only be there, and once you are able to let go and get out of the realm of feeling that force, which is trying to detract or distract you from your personal power, because it is oftentimes that experience which was not validated within you, that you have the right to have that. And then acknowledging that is to say, okay, I understand. Maybe that's why I have complex PTSD. Maybe that's why I have obsessive anger. Maybe that's why I feel stuck and I'm not able to self-care, because I have generalized that experience to incorporate many other experiences of my life. So I'm not taking care of myself. I'm not showering. I'm not eating. I'm not, getting gainful employment. All that is stemming from this root experience, oftentimes, which has its place earlier in the relationship or earlier in your life. Oftentimes is the foundation. It is often felt by many professional circles that it's between the ages of 0 to 5 that this is set up, and why one would reduce their standards and continue to perhaps accept this later in your life. But it's also to remember one key aspect with healing is to recognize that the memory is a memory. So what you have been through in the past, it is the memory of that experience. It is not actual thinking through it now. So your thinking through it now is very distinct and separate from that memory or what is there in the past. And so when we talk about really putting it behind you, literally when you think about that memory, you can ball it up and throw it behind you and then just kind of staple it away, as to use just kind of a neuro-linguistic sort of program or patterning, that if you can really get control over the image of that negative memory and then squash it up and then just throw it behind you and just kind of, staple gun it or hammer it into the past where it'll never ever come back to you again, you'll realize that that is a memory. It has nothing to do with your cognitions of today. Your thought patterns need to be constructed on a daily basis. In other words, you need to actually put a little bit of effort into establishing the new hardware for yourself, the new software. You need to be able to say, I am free, I am me. I am separate and distinct from that memory in my present life. I am inspirational right now. I am empowered right now. I'm comfortable feeling my personal power, and I'm letting go of the fear of success. Fear no longer permeates my body. I'm leaving that to the past, or I'm letting go of it forever, and it is behind me now, and I'm no longer seeing all of my experiences through the filter that was embedded in that tiny little pixel of the past. And if I'm hanging on to it, I'm hanging on to it because there's something there still meant for me to protect myself. So in other words, if you're still holding on to this negative experience, it's because there was something positive originally that you need to learn from that experience. In other words, it's saying, I needed to get super angry in order to protect myself, or I needed to completely self-medicate during that period of time to protect myself, or I needed to compulsively debt or compulsively overeat during that period of time to protect myself or to help me to feel good, as a way to validate myself or become kind of a true manifestation of that vision or image with which I had thought I wanted or created back then. So in other words, that vision or that identity that I am, that you had constructed or put together as a reaction from that, oftentimes was meant as a defense mechanism to protect yourself. In other words, it had to be done. You were in the fight or flight. So if you're still holding on to these post-traumatic stress syndrome feelings, it's because part of it is still playing a positive role for you. You're still replaying in your mind, I need to shut it down. I can't talk to anybody. I can't go out. Nobody can see me. These very messages, these very statements were what you had implanted in your mind in order to keep you protected in the beginning. So if you look back at, if you have compulsive anger, out of control, anger where you're just obsessively angry or trying to get back at people or settle the score. It's because in the beginning, you had needed to settle the score and get angry in order to protect yourself, in order to gain significance, in order to be heard, in order to say, hello, help me, I don't deserve this. So part of where you're at right now, if you are not completely, feeling completely, free and empowered, it's because part of you is holding on to a tiny little nugget of that prior experience, which was positive and adaptive. So it's acknowledging that and going, aha, I get it, peace and harmony. I have, I have this feeling of trauma because of this now, and I know where I'm feeling it. I have this feeling of obsessive anger right now, peace and harmony, because this is how I needed it before, and I'm still using that old tool. It's like having an old saw in your workshop, like that you have just gotten out. But you know what? The tool is, you need to open up a new workshop. You need to get some new tools in the shed. You need to get some, new cutting tools and carving tools in the workspace, in your basement, in your, what do you call it, where you have like your workshop. You need to get some new tools, and those are cognitive tools, and those are thoughts and feelings and images, and giving yourself a chance to reset a new positive feeling where you're not self-conscious or self-traumatized. You're not repeating the trauma and over again in order to keep an adaptation or keep that as what we call a defense mechanism or self-protective measure to keep you alive. I mean, generally, your body needed to do that to keep alive, like especially to gain certainty and significance. So I need to get this, A, to protect myself, be safe, get myself a little bit isolated away from the source. I had to, this is how I needed to comply. This is what I needed to do. This was I thought was my road to salvation. And so this is what I repeated again and again and again, because that's all I saw. My filter just blew it out of proportion. I mean, it became my life. So it's time to say now, I'm going to shrink this down now. That was one tool. That was one saw. And that was one hammer. And that was one daggone rusty nail. You know what? That nail is getting jiggly. That saw is not cutting it how I like it. It's time to sharpen up the tools. It's time to get a better looking nail or a little bit different sort of carving tool. It's like, let's try to get like a little something fancy. Let's get a finer grain, more and better resolution sandpaper now, so I can actually experience a more soft glide through my life. In other words, so that I'm now gliding through life in a state of bliss, in a state of harmony, in a state of joy, because those other tools are not going to make it for me. They're not going to carve out what I'm looking for. Those tools can only do a specific thing. They can't create joy. They can't create bliss. They can't create my inner passion. They can't create my purpose, because those tools are only meant to, I need something else that's going to make a hole through it. I need something, now I need, dynamite that's going to blow that out so that those tools are smithereens and they're never, ever at my disposal again, because they're just going to create the same result. In other words, that old jagged tooth rusty saw is only going to, it's going to cause a lot of pressure, and I'm not going to get very far. That tool is very limited. So it's time for me now to really get the tools that are creating the sound, the color, the feel, the taste, the thoughts of peace and harmony and joy and my life purpose and my amen and my talent and my genius. It is those tools that I want to keep around me now at my disposal. I'm picking up that cool new little tap hammer, tap, tap, tap. Those are my positive thoughts, my I am, my vision of how I want to feel and what I remember, which is distinctly cool about me or what I've accomplished before, which is oftentimes what that narcissist does not know, if that's a good tip. I've got that whole new little cool, even if it's like a nut grinder machine that creates a whole new filleting, or a cool, thin slicing knife that fillets a new vision of joy for me. That is, I put in a whole new blender of experiences. I'm now getting myself moving in a positive direction. It is picking up the tools, and it's those tools which what I'm describing right now and in my book that can help you create more distinctions, definition, and energy in your life, which create sort of the opportunity, the quantum field, the new thoughts, the new self-assessment, the new I am, and never ever become unempowered by these types, these thoughts, these tools, the experiences ever again. In fact, you'll repel them. You'll be able to shut them down. They won't get very far. They'll be stapled back to a place where they can never ever get at you again, because you are whole, you are liberated, you are free, and you are experiencing that personal power, that empowerment, that feeling of security that will never ever leave you. You can always turn to it once you are able to allow yourself the experience. And we'll go into more in depth in this. It is your buddy, Peace and Harmony. Much love to the Empowered Harmonizers, and I hope that these videos do help. Please share and please subscribe for more great tools, videos, discussion, and support.